Okay, let's get going. Thank you all for joining this afternoon. Hope you're having a good Tuesday today. So welcome to this webinar where we're going to look at understanding sporting event revenue. And just to say, it could be any event really, but we've got a good kind of demo to show a particular stadium and how you could get different data from an event there. And we're really going to try and dig into all the data points that you might be collecting on a match day, on an event day, and how Tableau can be used to actually visualize that. I'm Phil Lowe. I'm one of the account managers here at the Information Lab, and I've been looking after most of our sporting club accounts. I'm joined with Lorna Brown, who's the Zen Master, and she's been working on our Tableau demo alongside one of our data school consultants. Okay. Just to say as well, if you've got any questions, we've got a Q&A at the end, just pop them in the chat. If they're to do with the demo, Lorna might be able to answer them as she's going through. I'm going to try and look at those questions. So feel free to ask things around the demo and just pop them in the chat. Okay, so what are we going to look at today? We're going to start off with a couple of match day stories. Look at, a day in the life of a fan, what they're going to do on match day, and try and focus on where they might actually be spending money, and just to kind of generate some thoughts about what, where could you actually maybe capitalize on that? Are people spending different amounts, or are they going to have a different experience based on their demographic, based on what match it is, based on when the match is being played? So, what are they likely to spend? And maybe we could kind of focus in on how that could be capitalized. Then we're going to run through the awesome demo that Lorna's got that actually looks at that in a bit more detail within Tableau. And then we're going to see like how Tableau's actually told that story and where could you actually take that? What actions can you make based on that data? Where does that visualization itself, fit into the kind of commercial side of the events? So just a disclaimer, a warning, this presentation is extremely likely to make you want to return to attending live events. I'm hoping that a lot of people will end up looking like the people on the bottom there, extremely excited pretty shortly. So there's not long to wait now, 45 days to go, which kind of just about ties in with the end of the season. But it's likely that the next football season that starts in August is probably likely where most people will be back. But it's not long to wait. But I do warn, this is going to make you want to return to seeing some fixtures. Okay, so we've got a fan, say his name's Joe, and it's a midweek Premier League game. So Liverpool versus Brighton. So we're expecting a bit lower attendance because it's midweek, kind of an average ticket price. And because it's midweek, you might get some non-season ticket holders attending. So how are they usually going to approach that? They're going to purchase their tickets online, perhaps. They're a fan, they're not a season ticket holder. So, that's an initial data point. Might meet at the pub before the game with their mates. Once they're in the stadium, perhaps, half time, they'll buy a beer and a pie. They've got some good seats there behind the goal. They tweet a picture of the goal. And then, as the match is going on, the fixture ends with a good result, so they're excited about the weekend game. So at that point they kind of open up the app and purchase a game for the weekend. And after that, it's midweek game, so they've kind of got to go home. So pretty much straight away, as soon as the whistle blows, they kind of get the train home. So there's a few touch points here when they're in the stadium. There's a few touch points when they're kind of before that. But really, the only interactions are the kind of usual of the ticket revenue, some things from the kind of food and drink concession stands, and then maybe they might kind of buy tickets when they're actually in the stadium. But that's kind of the day of a midweek Premier League game. So moving over to Fred, he's a family man. This is a 4 p.m. Sunday league match. He's a season ticket holder, so he's got his ticket, but he actually then purchases tickets for his kids because he wants his kids to come along to the game. So his kids, obviously, they're really into the team. They've got a favorite player, so they go to the superstore and they see that there's one of their favorite players' shirts there. So they go into the superstore before the game, they get there a bit early and actually purchase a bit of kit. So one of their favorite players' shirts. So when they're in the stadium, Fred has a beer and pie and gets pizza for the kids. So spending a bit more on food there because he's with his family. Just wants to update his mates on the final result. So, it's a win for Liverpool. This game's a league match on the Sunday, which tends to be, a bigger kind of ticket price item. Let's say this is Liverpool, Man City. So it's going to be high attendance, a lot of ticket revenue. The ticket price might be a bit more, and you'd expect a lot of season tickets there as well. So, the match was really good. Liverpool won, great result. So the kids were really excited, really enjoyed it. Let's get some tickets for the next game. The other thing that's happened here is that actually the kids really want to get a signature, so they kind of wait around afterwards to get autographs. So, there's a few more touch points here if you kind of think about this experience, because the kids have come along. There's more likelihood that they might go to the superstore. Could we think about maybe offering some sort of promotion there? The food and drinks is going to be more if there's kids having different meals. And also, are they actually staying around the stadium for longer? Is there anything else we could do to make them a bit more engaged whilst at the stadium? So yeah, just a couple of different scenarios, a different experience that fans might have. And what I want to highlight here really is that there's lots going on. There's lots of different bits where you could collect the data and understand how are your fans actually experiencing being at an event. And so what we'll go over to is Lorna's demo now to actually see how Tableau could be used to really pick apart some of those trends in the data.
Cool, thanks, Phil. So I'm just gonna share my screen. So we have our Tableau dashboard. Now, just to be aware, all of the tickets and capacity data is completely made up. No one did go into a stadium on this particular match day in 2020. So just to be aware that it is fake data, and nothing about it is real apart from the locations within the stadium. But as Phil was talking about, he was saying about the difference between a weekday and weekend matches. So let's have a look at the particular match that Phil mentioned. So it was against Brighton, and we have this data set. So we can see it was on a Wednesday. Liverpool actually lost, but the food revenue is fairly high for this game, which was really good. The only other game that was higher was an Arsenal game. But the shop revenue, as Phil was saying, like the journey is that on a weekday, you're probably not going to go to the superstore, so therefore you're not spending as much time or money within the stadium. And you can kind of see the overall revenue is midway for this particular match. The capacity is a little bit lower. You have the gender split as well, and you can see the percentage of season tickets versus non-season tickets. And then also the split of who actually is in the stadium. So are they adults or are they juniors? And one thing that you can also do is see particularly where people are sitting, especially if they're season ticket holders. You know where they've purchased, you know a little bit more about them. So if I, for example, click on this block 122, it then goes into the seat level detail and I can find more information out about this particular person. The black circles are those that are not sold. So they're the potential ones that we might want to try and sell or push a promotion on if you want to have a full capacity stadium. But for example, I can click on a particular person. So this person is a season ticket holder. So I can click on them and it has opened on my other screen. So just 2 seconds. This person's Twitter also does not exist, but in theory, you could then go and find out the tweets that they have tweeted about the game. If you wanted to search more about that particular person, you can then see what interests them and maybe push some promotions to them as well. So with that in mind, you can then also see okay, well, how does this compare to the Man City game? So if I hover over, I can see this Man City game is conveniently up at the higher end of the shop revenue. So I can click on that and it'll change my match day perception. So I have high revenue in my shop. So they have gone and spent a lot of revenue inside the superstore getting their fan favorite shirts or hats and scarves if it's a little bit cold. The food revenue isn't as much as what it was for the Brighton game. Maybe that's because they've had a Sunday dinner already or something like that. But we could investigate a little bit more. Can we get them to spend more inside the stadium with the food sales? But then you'll also notice down here that the junior tickets are way above the average of all of the juniors across the rest of the games. So you can clearly see that there is a difference within these particular games. But the other thing that we can sort of have a look at here is, how does the different types of game affect any of those data points that we have? So do the different bands of the game. So band 1 is if the team finished higher in the Premier League last season through to lower in the Premier League for band 5. So you can kind of see that the higher the band, the total percentage of tickets sold is more. So the lower the band, the more tickets you have to sell. So could we therefore push a promotion at that particular match to try and get the capacity up more than what it currently is? We also have the fact that we can see some TV data as well. So do the different types of matches then have more TV views across the world, and could we try and do some ads based on those particular TV viewings to try and increase viewers? Again, with the shops, so you can see the shop data across the different types of brands. They don't necessarily change. People either do or don't buy from the shop. And the food revenue as well. So maybe the less capacity means less food revenue on those band 5 games. The other thing as well is to look at the time of the kickoff. So we can see that we have some weekday games, and how do they compare to the Saturday and Sundays? So the shop revenue for Saturday and Sundays is a lot higher than it is for weekdays. Is there anything that we can do during the weekday to try and boost that sales? And also the capacity, there's not much difference in terms of the overall capacity of the weekday, but the food revenue certainly does drop off for the weekend games. So we can try and think of where those promotions could come in for the different types of people that we have within our data set. Phil, I feel like I rushed through a bit of that demonstration, but is there anything that you can think of that you want to ask with this data set?
No, that's great. I think you know, even the secondary analysis that you kind of drill into is where it kind of comes to life. You know, it's really good seeing this representation, but it's that summary dashboard. And you know, the way that Tableau works is it's good at uncovering the trends underneath. So that secondary dashboard, I really like how it shows, you know, the expected patterns that you'd see, but also that there is actually quite a lot of variability. And so if you do think about the individual fan themselves, how are you going to maximize per fan, you know, how much they're spending? And that's usually done via promotions. You may just expect that, okay, well, total revenue is just going to be directly correlated with the price of the ticket. You know, the higher price ticket, there's more occupancy, but actually there's a lot of other factors going on. And how can you actually capitalize on some of those things as well? Can you run through, just that kind of thought process to the analysis of those things? And there is actually a question about the stadium map, but I think we'll come to that at the end for the Q&A. But yeah, just have a think about how you actually went into the analysis for some of those other questions that you've got.
Yeah, so when I was walking through this dashboard and creating it with my colleague at the data school, Joe, we just wanted to see if there was anything that really influenced what was causing those specific changes. So one of the things that was mentioned was the price of the actual tickets themselves. So with the banding of the games, does that change the way that we're seeing the data? And it does, especially with the capacity side of things, but does it affect everything overall? And the way that we could move this on with the analysis is create a little bit more of an exploratory side of things. So we could have the y-axis being the total percent of tickets, and then across the bottom we could then have the shop revenue. So does the percentage of the tickets sold actually increase or decrease the shop revenue? And we could make that into more of an exploratory. So that's something that we could take it to further if we had more time to be able to build some more analysis within this dashboard.
Yeah, great. Yeah, let's come back to some of the other stuff in the Q&A,
Okay.
which will be right around the corner. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Let's see. You back?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So what are you going to do with this data? Lauren's just shown a really good way to represent and actually explore some of this information to, uncover maybe some of the hunches that you had with how, how much revenue you're getting at each event. But some of the things you might want to do after this, once you've got this information, is maybe start focusing in on some of those things that you've seen. Is it worth segmenting your customers based on the expected attendance? You've probably got quite a few seasons worth of data. So it's actually saying, okay, well, are we actually starting to see these patterns that there's a different trend on weekends, or there's a game that's coming up that we expect a certain demographic at? How can we actually change promotions or actually start engaging with the fans based on who's actually going to be turning up? A lot of clubs have very kind of rich data on their season ticket holders. How can you make sure that they're, potentially bringing other people along, or that they are actually attending?
Phil is just having some internet issues at the moment. If you can still hear me,
Indeed.
Phil. Oh, turn your camera off and let's see if we can just go back over those points again. We missed you a little bit.
Okay. So yeah, apologies for my Wi-Fi. So just whether clubs have quite good detailed data on their season ticket holders. So can you kind of try and dig into what sort of demographic you're seeing at a match, and trying to see whether there's kind of specific promotions or encouraging season tickets to kind of come to certain matches that they might not usually attend, and when they're actually at the stadium, try and actually capitalize on those things. So, if you think there's going to be people with kids that are coming along, you might probably have that data. Can you actually have some sort of promotions for the store, the superstore for the kids? So is there a way to make sure that every time, a family are coming, that they will always go to the store and kind of add a bit of revenue coming from that? And then, is it worth actually discounting midweek tickets for certain demographics? Thinking about, that there's a different distribution. So how can we make sure that there's as many people coming to each game and kind of increase occupancy as much as you can? And I think the key thing is, where you're actually learning some of these things from the data, how can we present that back in the most useful place where you can actually start making actions? Can it then link through to an actual specific person within the actual system? So Lorna showed that you can kind of link through to a Twitter account, but if you had Salesforce or some other CRM system like that, then maybe it could work that you could actually click through on a person and actually link to their page and actually see some more detail from them, and then start making actions. Okay, well, we've got this promotion running. Should this person be included on it? You're uncovering trends through the data and actually finding out, okay, well, this is something I'm going to action. I'm going to include this promotion for a certain person. So where next beyond this? We've got quite a few different data types included here. We connected to some kind of like the TV viewage, some of the actual sales data from different parts within the stadium and the shop, the seat sales, the season ticket data, membership data, and we also had a Twitter link. But what other data could be brought in? Could you get something from the app that they're using? Could you get a data point when they're actually in the stadium and they link to Wi-Fi? how can you actually link these things together? Can you actually then link to some of the campaigns and the promotions you've got? If you see that they're a really avid fan, that they've got a very active social media, how can you then make sure that those people are actually prioritized? I've heard influencers get discounts on tickets and things like that. Can there's a lot of stuff you can do now with social data, and can that actually be linked into what you're seeing from some of your kind of commercial side data? And I think, kind of just repeating where you actually present the data is quite important. Who needs to actually make these? Marketing probably needs to see this data, even though it's quite a commercial based kind of dashboard, but you'd want the teams that are then going to react on this to be able to see this. So it should fit within whatever system you're doing some of those things and where the promotions are being led from. And then, of course, you want to kind of feed that data back. You've increased the promotions for certain demographics. How does that feed back into what you're actually seeing for the other games? So yeah, just a few things to think about based on that. So just moving on to the Q&A then. I think there's a couple of things, and let's start off with one of the first questions. There was a question about the seat map, Lorna. So how is that made, and how can it be made? I think the question was saying, well, usually you can only make kind of heat maps and mapping when there's actually geographic data. So how is that done?
Yeah, so would it be beneficial for me to share my screen and show the actual workbook?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, so in my dashboard, I'll just exit full screen. So we have the polygon data for each of the stadiums. So this is basically looking for each of the blocks within the stadium. And then essentially all I did was I gathered an XY coordinate for each one of the seats. So for Liverpool themselves, they have something called 3D mapping, which is on a website. And I managed to be able to get the individual seat numbers and row location and just pass them out with Alteryx to be able to get an individual seat map. So now I can drill up and drill back down to my individual seat level. But it's also using something called map layers, which is a new feature within Tableau, Tableau 2020.4. So if you have any questions about map layers, definitely reach out to us and we can help you with those questions.
Great, thanks. And yeah, just another couple of comments just about the specific different types of data. Weather conditions could be interesting. There's also, can you collect kind of gate in, gate out times to look at total time spent on site? And I think Daniel Tackley there said Tottenham, Spurs are doing that quite well. And how can you actually increase the amount of time someone's at the site? And that example we kind of suggested of kids wanting to wait around, how can you actually maximize on that? And is that done via different items, different promotions, or what can you actually do within the stadium that's maybe not relevant to the match itself, but that's going to actually increase people staying around?
Yeah, exactly. For the weather data, it's definitely worth making sure you can get that for each game, and maybe even like hour by hour weather data to see if there is a difference between what people are spending. Most of the food stands now have card transactions, and therefore you can get your card transactions and the date and time the specific transaction was taken. I don't know if you'd be specifically able to track that back to a season ticket holder, because you might not scan your season ticket and you might just pay for things. So you might not be able to track the full journey of the season ticket holder, but you could at least track them a little bit, especially if it's all connected within the stadium.
Yeah. And one thing I've just thought about as well, which is quite important, which we've not really touched on here, is one of the main revenue streams is sponsorship. So if you have all this data and you've got it presented in such a way, you could have quite good negotiations with sponsorship based on this. If it is a drinks company or a food company, they might be more interested in presenting it at certain places. This data can then be led, starts an actual discussion with your sponsors. Where do they want to be seen? Who do they want to be seen by? who's actually seeing them, what's actually included in the experience that fan's having. So I think it's interesting to think about this being presented back to sponsors potentially.
Yeah, especially on the sponsorship level, if you can push it through apps and you can say directly, okay, this promotion helped that particular sponsor, then with revenue and things like that, then it's definitely helpful for clubs.
Yeah. Daniel was just saying as well, the season ticket could be used like a loyalty card. You scan the card at purchase to get the discount, and that links to it. I think a lot of it's being done via the apps, and I think that's how Spurs do it quite well as well. In the stadium, when you log into their Wi-Fi, that uses a login. You can have that login being a membership, login, and then you're capturing that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in this space, and I think it's only going to get smarter and smarter as things start to get a bit more connected. But yeah, I think there's a lot of data out there, and it's interesting to see how it can all come together to kind of paint that picture.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other questions that we have is how easy would it be to replicate? And I guess the answer to that is it depends on what data you already have and collect about members or the tickets themselves. For me, they were fairly simple to join together, and I used Tableau Desktop to relate them with the new relationship model. So yeah, it's definitely, as long as you have fields that contain the same information so that you can relate them all together and bring them together at a game basis, then that's all this particular dashboard is doing at the minute. But if you do want to go down to an individual season ticket holder or a membership, you might just need a little bit more data points around that.
Yeah. Register Connor's got a great question as well. What stadium, team, sports are on the cutting edge of using this type of data? I'd probably say the US. Everything in the US, NHL, all that sort of stuff is miles ahead of what we do here. I think there could be some really good examples of how those stadiums and those events are capturing data. I don't know if you have any examples either, Lorna, of where it's been done.
No, I'm a big rugby league fan, and I don't think this is in rugby league either. Maybe the Australian rugby league might have some more advanced analytics like this, but I think it's definitely only going to get bigger and better. So if you can start getting ahead of the game now, it's definitely worth thinking about and understanding that fan journey.
Yeah. Yeah, another good comment by Daniel as well is this sort of data collection analysis happening for things other than sporting events such as live concerts? And that's exactly what we were trying to suggest is really this could be done for any event, anywhere where there might be some sort of membership, anywhere where there is multiple points of data where it's not just attendance, it's also what they're spending at events. I think if you look at it as that whole day, that whole picture of a day, there's so many points where there's certain things where they're going to be either purchasing, or if it's a concert, maybe it's the t-shirts that they're buying, the band, or whatever it is. There's always going to be little bits of data that you could collect, but it's all trying to think about, okay, how many of those data points actually exist within that journey, and how many of them can we start actually capturing, and what sort of systems do we need to start capturing that sort of thing. And I know that Salesforce are doing a lot of work in that area, particularly because that's the CRM, that's the customer viewpoint. So I think it's going to start to be a lot more commonplace. You'll start seeing, you're walking down the road and you'll start seeing promotions for certain things. I think it does already happen in the US in shopping malls. You'll get a discount off the shop that you just walk past. I think that sort of things is actually scarily going to be a bit more prevalent within kind of events as well.
Yeah, exactly. It can be used across the different events as such. It doesn't need to be necessarily football. It could be any indoor or outdoor event where you have tickets and you're collecting data about those particular people, especially those that have memberships. So it's definitely worth thinking about as we're sort of ramping back up into putting people back into stadiums. There is another question in the chat from Lee, which says, which item gets at the time element. So number of weeks in the season, relative standing. Not quite sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I was reading it as well. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe is it to do with what we're currently seeing at the moment? So there's lots of games, yeah, kind of seasonality. Okay, yeah, it would be interesting to see winter game attendance, summer game attendance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that probably also comes into play with the weather as well. I know you're probably thinking that you don't necessarily, the weather doesn't come into play because you pre-purchase your tickets, but maybe it's a sunny day and you have some spare tickets. So do you want to then push that to the memberships or the people that have bought a ticket before but aren't coming to this game? So something that you could definitely look into. I think that is, there's another thing from Hamad, which is underground transport data collection as well. So you could see how many people are coming in via the tube or trains and things, but you'd have to probably link to the train company to be able to get that information, maybe, with that.
Yeah, I think it can be, it's Wi-Fi. If you're connecting via a Wi-Fi network, or you have to sign in to some sort of Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
then that network, that information can be shared, I think.
Yeah. And then Daniel again just said winter game equals scarves and pies and summer games equals beers and ice creams. So yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about the promotion. And when you're collecting the food data, you could also say, okay, well, what are they actually buying? The dashboard that I shown was very high level, but the data set behind it tells you exactly, okay, are they buying a meal deal or are they buying just individual items? So you could also do the analysis on the food and time of day and things like that.
Yeah. Great. Well, yeah, thanks for some really good interaction. It's good to have quite an interactive Q&A. And yeah, really just to summarize again, it's Tableau's the tool there, which is kind of uncovering some of these stories, uncovering actually some of the trends, and it's then how do you actually then change your campaigns? How do you change your promotions based on that? So yeah, thank you for coming along. Thank you for interacting, and hopefully that was useful to kind of open your eyes to what's possible.
Yeah, and the recording will be available in the next couple of days. And if you do have any questions, feel free to either drop myself or Phil an email, and we can happily talk you through a little bit more of the dashboard as well.
Absolutely.
Glad we made you think slightly different, Regis. So, Phil, do you have a slide with our contact details on?
I don't have it at the ready, so I will just type it in the chat here.
Okay, I'll do mine too.
I can't spell, so that doesn't help.
Okay, I've just popped mine in the chat, and Phil will also do his. You've just sent it to panelists, Phil, and you didn't spell it right. So let me just change that information.
Typing isn't my forte.
Okay, there we go. I've just put it in there for you. So yeah, drop us a message if you have any other questions. We're happy to help. But yeah, so thank you everyone for joining this webinar. Thank you, Phil, for digging into this data, and hope you have a good rest of your day. And we'll see you all again soon.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.